This is Secret Mom Hacks, episode 104. My name is Krista, and I'm your host. It's February 26th, 2025, and today's show is super special for several reasons. It's been quite some time since we've had a special guest interview. I've been doing quite a few solo episodes these past couple of weeks, but also because we have an absolute powerhouse joining us today. Someone who has touched the hearts of millions with her words, wisdom, and unwavering faith. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome onto the show Annie Downs. She's a New York Times bestselling author who has sold over 1 million books. She's a sought-after speaker and the host of the wildly popular That Sounds Fun podcast with over 100 million downloads. She's also the brilliant mind behind the Let's Read the Gospels podcast, helping listeners engage with scripture in a whole new way. But today, we're diving into something incredibly close to her heart, her latest children's book, Where Did TJ Go? It's a tender and thoughtful story helping kids navigate grief and loss. As moms, we know how tough it can be to talk with our little ones about these big emotions. And Annie has created something truly special to guide us through those hard conversations with love and faith. Now, grab your coffee and let's jump into this conversation with Annie Downs. You've written several children's books, but you just released Where Did TJ Go? And it tackles this difficult topic of grief and loss for children. And I've had the chance to read through it and watch the video of you with your sister Tatum and sweet nephew Sam.
Isn't he the cutest?
He's so cute. Oh my gosh. Just precious.
Thank you.
So little ones. Will you just take a moment to share with our listener who just may not be up to speed what inspired you to write this book?
So I'm the oldest sibling in my family, and my next youngest sister, the one right next to me, is named Tatum. She's the co-author on the book. She and her husband, Jacob, like you said, have one son named Sam, who is 4 now, 4.5. And when he was 18 months, Tatum and Jacob got pregnant again, and which is great. She had had 4 miscarriages, failed IVF. Sam was a miracle. And so when they got pregnant again, we were all shocked. And about in the first trimester, we realized that TJ is the baby, that TJ was really sick. He had a life-limiting diagnosis of trisomy 18. And so for the majority of Tatum's pregnancy, we prepared for what the doctors told us would happen and hoped that God would do something different. And in that, we started looking for a resource to help Sam. So I mean, you and I are in the same world, Krista, of like, we know a lot of people who write books, and we know a lot of people who are professionals in their field. And so I started calling David and Sissy from Raising Boys and Girls, other therapists I know, pastors, and I called a couple of moms who had been in a similar experience of losing a child while raising other children. And no one had an answer for me. There were a couple of books people suggested, but the main one people suggested didn't have a gospel story in it. And then there was like a smattering of others. And all of a sudden I was like, well, I don't make casseroles very well. And there's a lot I can't do, but I can tell a story. And so I wrote a story for Sam, and it was always just for Sam, Krista. Like, I've done this a couple of other times where I have gifted a story to a family. One was when a family was moving. I just wrote them a little story about them moving away. And those have never become books that anybody will ever see. And I thought that's what we were doing with Where Did TJ Go? I thought I was just writing a story for my nephew, Sam. And so I voice memoed it to myself. And it's almost like it downloaded to me, Krista. I voice memoed this story of what was happening in Tatum's body and what would happen to TJ, and that he would die, and then what happens to TJ. And so I voice memoed a couple of thoughts about what heaven might be like based on scripture. And then at the end of the story, I looped back to, and it's still okay to be sad. And you can know the truth of heaven and still be sad. There is good news even in sad stories. And I got home that night. This was probably 2 weeks before TJ was born, because we thought he wasn't coming home from the hospital. And so This was a couple weeks before he was born. And I got home and I typed it up and stole clip art from the internet and then printed it out, did a copy for my sister and her family, did a copy for my parents. And I'm telling you, Chris, I thought that was it. And TJ ended up living 56 days. 3 of those weeks were in the NICU and 5 weeks at my brother-in-law and sister's home in hospice care. And after he died, my sister started reading Where Did TJ Go to Sam? And she started changing it because it was too long and he was getting bored in the middle and all this stuff. And so that's why she's the co-author, is because she changed the book as she read it to Sam. And then a few months later, I sent it to my agent and I just said, hey, this is a super niche book and the publisher may not want to use their energy on this, but we really needed this. And thanks be to God, the Revell was like, this is a need. We will put this out. And now we are in the first week, when we're recording this, we're in the first week of the book's existence, and it has sold more than any of my other children's books already, which is just shocking. We've never had a first week like this, which is heartbreaking too, Krista, right? Because what it means is that people need it. What it means is there are families who are grieving or friends who know of families that are grieving. My sister says a lot, I wish this wasn't our story. I wish we didn't have to write this book, but I'm so glad that it exists now, because now I'm not afraid to say to you, Krista, like when people are like, what's the book? Here it is. Here it is. This is the book that tells good news, even in sad stories, and we don't have to wait anymore. I got a DM this morning and a woman said, I bought 2 copies to support your family and to honor the work y'all have done. And I didn't need either of them. And this morning, a friend called me and I'm taking a book to her today because of who they just lost in their family. And you just go like, yeah, we got to put them on our shelves. Like we got to have them. And so our hope is that every family who needs it, every family who's lost a sibling will get a copy. And then those of us who don't need it today will have copies on hand, because tomorrow may be the day that a friend needs to be reminded that there's good news and sad stories.
Absolutely. Amen. And I just want to affirm that for you. You're already an incredibly successful author and have all of these books that have sold millions of copies around the world. And it would be so easy to just say, oh, I don't understand this, don't understand why we're going through this, and move on about life and be there supporting your sister and your family and so on. But I think that just shows it's affirmation. Like when God is speaking to you and we go through these experiences, follow that gut. It doesn't matter if you're in their car, you're in the car or where you are, just like you were saying, you can't write, okay, speak the voice memo. And you just mentioned it's like it was downloaded to you. I think it's beautiful, finding beauty in those messes, finding the message in the mess, right?
Yes. And my 2 thoughts from hearing you say that. One is you don't have to publish a book for your story to matter to people, right? Like this can just be an example to our friends listening of like, even if you just sit down at a coffee shop with someone and say, here's the thing we just went through, the seed that was planted in your life of sorrow sprouts a tree that has fruit that feeds far more people. And so whether that's giving your testimony at a church on Sunday or sharing with the PTA or just telling a friend across the table or posting on your Instagram, your story matters to other people. And you are the only one who can tell your story. And so that's really important. But I'll tell you, Krista, the real generosity here is my sister and brother-in-law and my nephew who do not have public lives, but have chosen to let the illustrator draw them looking just like them and telling their story, using their real names, putting their real pictures in the book. Like even when Tatum talks to people about it and they say, how can we follow you online? She's like, I'm not a public person online. You can't. So they have I've chosen this. This is my job. My family has experienced, much like I'm sure yours has, my family has experienced shrapnel from my public life. They've never chosen it. I chose it. But now Tatum and Jacob and Sam have said, this story matters to families, and we want to see TJ's life multiplied in fruit that feeds others. And so we will put our lives in the public sphere on behalf of what God might do for other families. And I just think that's so honoring and so generous of them.
Yes. Explaining loss to children can be incredibly challenging, even as adults.
Yeah.
Loss is difficult to understand and accept. So how did you approach writing Where Did TJ Go in a way that makes the subject approachable and comforting for young readers?
I mean, Krista, the real is I don't know if there's a stronger person than a grieving parent who is parenting. Like, what an incredible thing to have to do, to say, while I deal with the grief of loss of my child, I have to parent my children through their grief. I mean, I so highly honor all of our parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles who are parenting through grief and loss. We did a couple of things in the book to try to help parents, because what we wanted Where Did TJ Go to be is this conduit that where you maybe can't say the word died, you can read it. Or maybe where you can't explain your grief and sadness, you can read it and let the kid be with you in it. One of the things that I think your friends listening will see when they get their copy of the book is, even though the Bible is very clear that the streets in heaven are gold, we didn't make the streets gold. And we did it on purpose because we wanted kids to see heaven as a thing that is real and not that different than what they're experiencing. Now, are the streets in heaven gold? Yes, they are. We just wanted it to look like we wanted the zoo to have a dirt floor like a zoo does, because we wanted kids to go, oh, is there a zoo in heaven? TJ is riding a giraffe in heaven. Can I ride animals in heaven? And just let them have some like creative imagination around what heaven might be. And I think that's how we help kids in grief, is we walk them through it with us. We tell them stories of it. And David Thomas from Raising Boys and Girls wrote a letter in the back of the book, which we are so honored by and grateful for, because we're not the experts on parenting. We're doing it with one kid in our family, right? And 7 of our little cousins. But David Thomas is the expert. And so in the back, he does this really beautiful, like, let the kids lead, let them ask questions, follow their leadership. And he says a lot, be actual and factual. And so that's why the book doesn't say TJ floated off to be with Jesus. It's like, no, TJ died. He died. That does not mean he does not exist. He did not poof into nothing. He is just somewhere else. And here is where he is. And so all of that is kind of what we worked on, trying to help parents and grandparents and friends reading this book to kids as they grieve, to help. One of the biggest feedbacks we're getting already, Krista, is how the parents have had to read it by themselves first before they read it with their kids, because they need to cry their way through it and see their own story in it before they're sitting with their kids. And picture books heal us all the time too, Krista. So I get it. I mean, that's my story too.
Well, and the book presents grief in a way that encourages understanding rather than fear. Because
yes.
I think for a lot of us, and especially I remember as a little kid, like being afraid of death.
Yeah.
So what, and I know you've touched on this, but I'd love to expand a bit. What message do you hope children and parents take away after reading the book?
The main one to me that I feel like I worked the hardest on, because it's the work I've done the most in therapy for myself, is you can hold joy and suffering at the same time. What we didn't want to do is say, isn't it sad TJ died? But look at heaven. Yay. That just isn't the full story. And we also didn't want to go, isn't it sad TJ died? Heaven's okay, but this is awful. Right? We wanted to hold both. And so saying to kids and parents through this book of like, here's a really sad story. Here's the beauty of heaven. And once you know the beauty of heaven, if you still feel sad, okay, me too. Of course, we wish TJ was here. The way it is supposed to be is we are supposed to be the ones who watch kids grow up and they end up burying us. They are supposed to outlive their parents and aunts and uncles and grandparents. And we all outlived TJ. And it's not supposed to be like that. And so it is still sad to us. It's sad to me. I mean, my whole family was just in New York with me, and it was a choice at times to go like, I can't let the sadness be overwhelming that we have a 4-year-old and not a 2-year-old. I feel that still. We are going to feel that forever. And what a great gift to know where TJ is and who he's with and what is. And so it's that, Krista, can we hold joy and suffering at the same time? Yes, we can.
Absolutely. Well, Annie, your work spans many audiences, from adult and teen readers to podcast listeners, and you've written some other children's books too. How did writing Where Did TJ Go differ from your previous books, and did it challenge you in new ways?
Yeah, I always have the exact person I'm writing for framed on my desk. So every time I do a chapter book, every time, like all my memoirs, I know exactly who I'm writing to. And the same is true for my kids' books. And so the very first one, What Sounds Fun to You, was written to my friends' kids. And they are all in the book. I sent all their pictures to our illustrator, Jenny Poe. She put them all over the book. The second one is So Happy to Know You. I used to teach elementary school. And I taught 4th and 5th grade, and I taught 5 years. So I have 5 classes of kids. And I wrote So Happy to Know You for my 4th and 5th graders. And I got on Facebook, and I haven't taught them in 20 years. They're all adults with kids. But I got on Facebook and found like 150 of the 180 of them and sent them all books. I just mailed them to them and was like, I wrote this for you. Like, I still know your name and I still think of you. And I signed it straight to them. I wrote Where Did TJ Go for Sam. And so it was not harder. It is probably simpler. It is probably a little more personal. And it isn't one that's probably going to be read in a classroom of 5th graders. Maybe it will be. Maybe this will be one that gets read in a classroom. But I mean, it is a tough thing to do in a public place. What Sounds Fun to You and So Happy to Know You are not. We see them in libraries. We see them in classrooms. So this one's more personal and private. And this is the one that will be read in homes and in bedrooms. And so the writing of it was more personal and private, and like we're sitting on a couch versus me teaching in front of a classroom. And so I think it feels that way. It does to our family, but maybe that's just because it is to our family, but it feels significantly more personal, obviously.
You've already mentioned the note from David Thomas in the back of the book, that's where I lost it when I was reading the book. He affirms what a beautiful resource it is, and offers a few ideas, as you'd mentioned, and other resources to help parents continue these conversations with their children. Yeah. What other advice would you give parents who are also grieving while trying to support their children through loss?
I'll just quote another David Thomas quote, and this is from David and Sissy. This idea of learning how to grieve with your children, not on your children. And so that is hard. Here's the advantage, put that in huge quotes. Here's the advantage our family had is we had 7 months of slow grief that we could prepare. When it is a stillbirth, when I got a call this morning that a friend is 15 weeks pregnant and they went in yesterday for an ultrasound and there is no heartbeat. You have no preparation for that. And so it's not like parents can go, okay, I'm going to grieve this. How do I not grieve on my kids? How do I grieve with my kids? So most grief is tragic and sudden. Very rarely do we get preparation, especially with babies. And so my encouragement would be pay attention to your own grief and make sure you have outlets with adults. And your only outlet doesn't need to be in your home. You know this because you remember this as a kid. I do too, Krista. Kids know a lot more than we tell them. and they feel a lot more than we tell them. That does not mean we pretend in our behavior. That does not mean we hide. It just means that we appropriately grieve in the right places with the right people. It is appropriate for our family to grieve with Sam and with our other nieces and nephews. We do not want to pretend like we are not sad, because then all that tells a child is, if you feel anything but happy, hide it. And that's not who we want our kids to be. That's not who we want to be. Mm-hmm. And so it's this opportunity to say, okay, and you're not going to do it perfectly. We are not doing it perfectly. It is a learned thing, but that is part of being human with your people you're living with too. So that would be my encouragement, is if you aren't in grief right now, if you are just living your life and tragedy has not struck in the last 6 hours, then can you think about, next time I'm grieving and we're walking our kids through this, what is my line of how I know on versus with? If you're in the middle of it, call another adult that is not in your home and ask them to walk closely with you in this. Who's a friend, who's a counselor, who's a mentor, who's a pastor, that you can say, hey, this is my goal. My goal is not to hide. My goal is not to pretend. My goal is to grieve with, not on. And just have a specific person that walks with you in that.
Well, Annie, you've launched and host multiple wildly successful podcasts. That sounds fun. Let's read the Gospels and Mini BFF. And I just love the hopeful, inspiring content you share, Annie. And just recently started listening to the Mini BFF podcast with my daughter.
Thank you.
And with Mini BFF, you have the podcast, you have the book club. This is another great resource I want to point our listener towards. Will you tell us a little more about Mini BFF and the story?
Yeah, it started in COVID because I read picture books to my friends' kids all the time in Nashville, like go over and read them a book before they go to bed. And in COVID, we were all stuck in our own houses, and I was FaceTiming with families and reading their kids' books. And it was giving the parents a break, which is kind of my specialty. I'm kind of like the witching hour friend. Like, I am great from 5 to 6:30 because I've been at work all day and I want to play. The parents have been at work all day and they need to make dinner. This is my golden hour is witching hour for parents. And so during COVID, actually what we were doing is I was reading a story every night at 6:00 Central live on Instagram. And we were having, Krista, we were having like 10,000 phones join. I was reading to 10 to 20,000 kids every night. It was unbelievable. So, and we just ended up doing it for a couple of years, where every Monday night I would read a book. And those are all on Mini BFF Club. If you go to Mini BFF Club on Instagram and go to the Reels, you can play a story to your kid every night for probably 100-something nights, because we've got a ton of books that I read live to the kids. And what it's morphed into now the podcast exists where we tell Bible stories. And part of that is because I remember being a kid listening to Amy Grant tapes. Amy Grant would tell stories, and I thought, I want to do that. Like, the first time I met Amy Grant, I sobbed, and I was like, you used to tell this story about the quarter at the bottom of the pool, and I used to listen to it about you diving to the bottom of the pool. And so I just thought, I could do that. And so there's a girl on my team, a woman on my team named Taylor Ann Dietrich, who is also a former elementary school teacher. And she really runs Mini BFF for us. She helps develop all the content, helps us know where the season is going. And right now on Mini BFF, I think there's probably something like 70 episodes. And our last 3 are about, where did TJ go? Like, who are you as a human? How do we handle grief, and what's heaven like? And they are the heaven one I just sobbed working and reading through. But those just exist because if we're serving parents through That Sounds Fun, if we're serving parents through Let's Read the Gospels, if we're serving teenagers through Speak Love and Perfectly Unique, if we're serving adults through Remember God, I want to serve their kids too. I want to serve a family. And so we wanted Mini BFF and Mini BFF Club and the Mini BFF podcast to feel like a parent goes, I already trust Annie because I've read her books or because I listen to her podcast. So I trust that same person can speak into my kids' lives. I want to be another safe adult in your child's life.
Amen. I certainly feel that way. Yes.
Thank you.
I love your content as I mentioned. My husband and I I just turned 40 this past December.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank
It's
you.
the best decade of my life so far.
I'm here for it. I'm ready. And in my 40 years, I was saved as a young child and have done devotionals here and there, teen devotionals, women's devotionals, right? Mom devotionals. But in my entire life, I've never read the Bible front to back. And that was something our pastor charged us with this past right around Christmas. If you've never read the Bible from beginning to end and you are a Christian, you need to change that. And so my husband and I have been reading the Bible starting with January 1. Yeah. We've read every day. And so I'm really excited about, I can't wait to, well, I'm not trying to rush the process, of course, but I'm eager to get to the Gospels. We're in Leviticus right now.
Girl, me too. I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm about to start the book of Numbers.
And I'm really excited to get to the Gospels to go along with your Let's Read the Gospels.
Thanks.
I'm really excited for that. And all of that to say, of course, we have a children's Bible for our daughter. We're all readers in our family, and we've really emphasized, even since she was itty bitty in my belly, I've been reading to her.
Yes.
And that was another thing when our pastor said that over the holidays. I was like, this needs to be a nightly ritual of reading a children's Bible story. And so we've been doing that too.
Thank you. Yeah, we wanted to point kids to scripture in a story way. And then at the end of every episode, we say, hey, parents, if you want to read this for yourself, it's Matthew 1 and Romans 3 or whatever the scriptures are, So that was kind of my hope is that families would hear a story that would tie to a Bible story that may or may not be familiar, but then would actually go, hey, and the kid goes, I want to know this. And my sweet little nephew, Sam, again, very biased. So I understand that he is not an unbiased audience. But he got freaked out the other night. He's 4 years old. And he said to my sister, does Annie have a mini BFF podcast about fear? Can we listen to one about fear? And so we hope that it also is a resource in the night or in the morning or when you're driving to school, that it is a resource that you go, hey, our family just walked through this. Or we got to talk about being generous because these kids will not share. And then you go, I bet Annie has one on that. And you just have it's a conduit, right? I'm not the parent. I want to be the other safe adult that helps you have a thing that is between you and the kids that gives you a place to meet and to talk.
Annie, this has been so, so fun. What is something I didn't ask that you wish that I would have?
You did a great job. I don't think you didn't ask. Oh, can I tell you two more things about TJ that I think will be helpful to our friends listening?
Please. Yeah.
One of the huge things we have realized when we started talking about the book is there are nonprofit organizations, churches, NICUs, everywhere looking for resources like this. They have come out of the woodwork, Krista. It's been incredible to see what infant loss families have done after they have grieved and decided to turn, that it was time to put some purpose behind their story in a public way. Everyone's putting purpose behind their story in their own life and family, but some have decided to do it publicly. And so we went to our publisher because a lot of them send care packages. We got a bunch when TJ was sick and when TJ was dying. And so the publisher, God bless him, Revell said, okay, through Baker Bookhouse, we will sell 50% off if they order 25 copies or more. So for these nonprofits that need chunks of books, they're half off with free shipping. And so you can go to wheredidtjgo.com and we have the code there and we have the link. So if you or if a group of friends want to get together and buy 25 copies, there aren't rules. You don't have to prove that you're a nonprofit or anything like that. It's just, if it is helpful to you and you need a bigger chunk of books, that is the best price. You're not going to get better than 50% off with free shipping. The other thing we're doing is the thing we've noticed, and what's true in our family is every family wants their child to be remembered by name. And so we are signing these book plates that say in loving memory of. And if a family has lost a child, or if you're gifting it to someone who's lost a child and you want it signed in loving memory of that child, there's a place to do that on wheredidtjgo.com. And I sign my name on every one of them. We say the kid's name out loud and I'll write it. and I'll send it to you. And it's free. It's just get your book wherever you love to buy books. And then you fill out that form on wheredidtjgo.com and we'll sign them. I'll sign them. I say we too much and it makes people feel like someone else is doing it. I'm doing it. I will sign them and we'll send them to you. We'll mail it to you for you to stick inside your book. So far, I just did the 500th one this week. Can you imagine, Krista? 500 families already in the first week of the book's existence asking us to remember their child's name. And many of them have multiple children's names on the book plate. I'll tell you, I saw one. We've mailed most of the 500 already. And so they're arriving at people's houses. And this mom held the daughters were Leah and Grace. And this mom held the book plate and her son said, she's videoing this. She put it on Insta story. And the son says, those are my sister's names. And Krista, sobbing, watching this on Insta story. And then the next slide, the mom said, I did not know how much it would mean to me to see someone else write my daughter's names. Because of course, teachers didn't write their names and they haven't gotten cards. And, the family has written Leah and Grace, but a stranger hasn't. And now a stranger / another safe adult has written Leah and Grace's names. And so if there is any family that would mean something to, the publisher, Chris, as you can imagine, the publisher's like, how long do you want to do this? And I was like, this is not a pre-order campaign. We will do this. They weren't being they were just asking how long I was going to do it. And I was like, for actual ever? I don't care. We will leave this available for actual ever. As long as a family has a child that they want us to remember by name, I will write a book plate. Unless we quit printing book plates or quit printing books, I will write a book plate. So that's not going anywhere. So if that will serve you or a family that you love, please go to wheredidtjgo.com. You purchase the book wherever you want to. This is not to buy the book. You buy the book somewhere else, wherever you want to. And then you just fill out that form and we will send you a signed book plate in the mail to put inside the book.
Perfect. And I will include all of those details as well in the show notes.
Thank you. Yeah, it's all at wheredidtjgo.com.
Well, that's a wrap for today's conversation with Annie. You can find links to her social platforms, books, including Where Did TJ Go, and her incredible podcasts in today's show notes at secretmomhacks.com/episode 104. I'm curious what your favorite part of our interview was. I hope you're walking away inspired with tips either for yourself or a mom friend. If that's the case, please follow me on your favorite podcast platform if you haven't already. Give me a 5-star rating and leave a review sharing your favorite takeaway so far. You can do all of that by going to ratethispodcast.com/secretmomhacks. Don't forget to stop by secretmomhacks.com where you can find resources and enter your email address so every new show is delivered straight to your inbox. Stay tuned for the next episode of Secret Mom Hacks, which will drop March 12th. And until then, you've got this, mama.